Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this edition of Sports Talk Philadelphia. I am your host, Tyler Harper. As you can see there by our opening graphic, a very somber opening to Sports Talk Philadelphia, of course, with this past Monday, Flyers owner, founder, chairman Ed Snider passing away after a 2-year battle with cancer at the age of 83. So we're going to spend this first segment of the show just talking about the legacy he leaves behind with this Flyers team before we get into our Flyers Caps playoff preview. So first, let me introduce my panel. We've got Anthony Fleet and Steve Graham. Guys, thanks for joining me today. I'm excited for the show. So, but unfortunately, obviously, not the happiest of starts. This, I mean, obviously, the man's had been fighting cancer for 2 years. On top of that, 83 years old. So this isn't exactly surprising in any way, but still, and Fleet, we'll start with you. Still an impact there because he's the sole reason that hockey exists in the city of Philadelphia ever since 1967.
Absolutely, and the first thing I want to say is, thank you, Mr. Snider, for bringing hockey to the city of Philadelphia. And, the fans, a lot of fans here have certainly loved the Philadelphia Flyers ever since they originated here. Yeah, he's had a huge impact. His legacy really speaks for itself. He was able to win a couple of cups back in the late 70s, and more or less, the Flyers have always been a competitive team in hockey, for the better part of 40 years. And, whether they get through some laws a couple of times, but this franchise has been really relevant, since pretty much since they've been born. And, that's solely thanks to Mr. Snider for, just funding the team, just keeping this thing afloat. And, I feel so sorry for his family, and I hope they're able to cope with the loss well.
Yeah, Steve, it's crazy because he was at I believe it was a Sixers-Celtics game, and he's arriving with someone from the Bruins organization, with the Celtics organization, and he looks and he sees a line forming around the building at the Wilco window. He goes, "What's that line for?" And he's like, and the Celtics guy was like, "Oh, that's for the upcoming Bruins game. They've got this guy, Bobby Orr, who's a superstar in this league." And ever since then, it intrigued Snider. When he heard about a possible franchise going to Baltimore, he's like, no, hold on. He's like, I could build a group here and bring a team here. And lo and behold, he did it. So how crazy is it that one man's vision really started this whole organization?
Yeah, it's just the entrepreneurial spirit, just the man that Ed Snider was. Like, you hear it again and again, the Flyers cease to exist without this guy's dream. And Ed Snider, had an idea, and he made it a reality now for plenty of years. And you hear every player that comes to the Flyers when they talk about Ed Snider, especially Wayne Simmons recently when he came over from the Kings, and he said, "I've never played with an owner like this, a guy who comes up and shakes the players' hands in the post game, thanks them for being on the organization, congratulates them on a big play." And it's just, you really see the impact this guy has had just based on the players that we've gotten the chance to watch so far.
Yeah, and you talk about multiple players talking about how he would go up and shake their hands, interact with them. A lot of players saying other owners would never do that. And a lot of players, both past and former players, have been sharing stories of Ed Snider's passions. One of my favorite is one story Keith Jones shared about back in a '99 playoff series against Toronto when the Flyers were getting ticky-tack calls on them all game, and when John LeClair just couldn't take it anymore because he was getting cheap shot. He takes a cheap shot at a Leafs player, gets a penalty. After the game, Ed Snider goes up to Keith Jones and goes, "Say whatever you want. I'm paying for the fine." And Keith Jones is like, "All right, sure." So he goes, he blasts the refs in the media. Ed Snider has a tirade against the refs in the media. And then when they're cleaning out their lockers, Ed Snider goes, "Hey, Jonesy." Jones is like, "What?" He goes, "You got off cheap." He goes, "You got fined $2,000. I got fined close to $10,000. So, but that's just how passionate he was about this team. He wasn't just one of these owners who wanted to make a profit and maybe like flip his team or just live off the wealth. He was embroiled in this franchise. Steve, I know you're a big Sinatra fan. He did it his way, kind of like how Steinbrenner did it his way, kind of like how Al Davis and even Cowboys owner Jerry Jones, like, these are guys who run their organization their way.
Yeah, just the more and more I read about Snider now that, people are writing stories, you see that the decisions he made, it was always about his ideas and the people he founded these ideas with over the money. The money just came along with it, and suddenly he had a private jet and was going to Italy every summer. But that's besides the point, is that Ed Snider was a visionary, and he put these things into place. Comcast Spectator, all of the companies with that. He was, building up stadiums in Boston by the time, the Flyers were well established. So just to see a guy like that, you just hear, you can have a dream and you could build it, and it's just, the quintessence of that is that Ed Snider can turn a dream into a reality.
And what I really like is how his players, they play with that passion that he possesses as an owner. You see his spirit and his will, and that trickles all the way down to his hockey team, and you see that performance on the ice, year after year. And a lot of people say, like, that's what propelled this Flyers team. He's been sick, he's been battling this cancer, and so the Flyers, they took it upon themselves to say, you know what, we're going to battle, we're going to go out there for our owner, our sick owner, and put on a performance and make the playoffs, and let's see where we go from here.
And you saw the signs adding up. Just to go off what Fleet said, they had to go on that run to make the playoffs since February, and they visited Ed Snider's house in California during that West Coast trip, and then he doesn't make the team photo, and then he's FaceTiming in during that national anthem. It's just that, you got to say that Ed Snider really gave him the push they needed to be in the playoffs.
Yeah, this team has just always been charged with emotion. Now, as you talk about those signs leading up to it, I think it's obviously more and more evident as to at least partially why, because they are playing for their owner. And I want to go back to the decisions he made, because there were times, especially in the last couple of years, where he made some decisions where a lot of people kind of raised their eyebrows and said, what's he doing here? See, like, Mike Richards and Jeff Carter getting traded so that way they could sign Briz to a massive deal that didn't pan out. And, of course, a couple years back, firing Peter Laviolette after 3 games. There were some decisions Ed Snider made where you're just like, I don't know what he's doing, and you didn't always agree with them. But at the end of the day, it was because of that passion, because at the end of the day, he was a fan. Like, he had a rule in his press box where you didn't talk to him when the game was going on. No, you talked during intermission. Otherwise, he just gave you the eternal death stare. So it's really just crazy to think about. But this man really established this team and this legacy.
Yeah, ownership is hard, and when the Flyers, during that time that you mentioned where they made all those transactions, they were kind of going through a weird rebuild, kind of like, they felt as though that they could contend. They needed a goaltender, so they reached for Brizgalov, and you had to shake some guys off. So it's hard, when you look back at it, maybe if they kept Richards and Carter, who knows what would have happened. But at the time, you kind of try to rationalize, and you got to pull different strings. You don't want to do what the Phillies did and keep aging veteran players too long when they're past their prime. That's really a detriment to your team. So it's a two-way thing, and it's starting to pan out now. But at the time, you raise your eyebrows at it.
The people that worked with Snider usually say that he had this philosophy of hiring great people to do a good job, and before Ron Hextall came around, Ed Snider had this philosophy of trading to rebuild his Flyers team, and they went through years and years of trying to rebuild, trading, and you get those massive deals. And Ron Hextall comes in and has this idea of developing younger players, and I think it takes a lot from Ed Snider to accept that philosophy, try something new after all of these years, and you really see some success out of it. Shane Gosper is a prime example of that. So it just goes a lot to say that Ed Snider had an open mind to new ideas.
Yeah, and also the trust level Ed Snider had with Ron Hextall say, okay, I'm going to let you implement this. And now we're seeing the fruits of their labor, and they're pretty much a year ahead of schedule. So obviously our condolences go out to the Snider family. It's going to be an emotional, probably another week or so for the entire Flyers family and fans as a whole. But it's just a thing of everybody just sticking together. So when we come back, we will get into better spirits, and we'll preview this Flyers Cap series, so don't go anywhere.
You might feel like there's too many problems in the world, or that, you as a 15-year-old, 16-year-old can't really make a difference.
It's not always about you. It's not just one person. It's a group. It's a team. If we all show up together, that's what it's all about.
I was a part of helping to build what it is today.
I'm really lucky to get to be a part of that legacy.
Just that simple act that takes, 5 or 10 minutes of your time is making a difference and is transforming someone else's life.
Once you get there and realize how much you can change someone's life, it's one of the best feelings in the world.
I'd do anything to convince you just to be a part of this.
You guys keep doing what you're doing, it's something special.
Get up and try something. Just try it. Just go to one event, one action team event.
It'll just make you feel so good about yourself.
Welcome back to Sports Talk Philadelphia. Why we foreshadowed enough, let's actually break down this Flyers Cap series, because this series is going to be interesting with the Flyers, of course, barely getting in on one of the last days of the season, going up against, the team that was the best in the regular season this year, who won the President's Trophy. So let's start to break down the Washington Capitals, and let's start with, we got to start with their captain, Alexander Ovechkin, because, man, is this guy a dominant force. 50 goals, 21 assists, won his sixth Maurice Rocket Richard Trophy for player with the most goals in a season. That number is staggering. 6 times winning that trophy, 50 goals. Steve, we'll start with you. This guy is a dynamic player. When he's on his game, one of the most, if not the most feared player in the NHL. It's really a scary sight.
You don't leave Alexander Ovechkin open on the ice. There's always a defender on him, and I'd argue that this was his best season so far, because you have the previous seasons where he's put up 50 goals before and he's made those astonishing, around every defender kind of goals. But he's got TJ Oshie on his team. He's got Nicholas Backstrom, who's playing tremendously well. There's 4 guys on the team with 40-plus points this year, and he's still found a way to put the puck in the back of the net 50 times. And there's 2 defenders on him each time. So Alexander Ovechkin, a force to be reckoned with this playoff series.
Yeah, this team is loaded, and it starts with Ovechkin, and it's not like Ovechkin's this finesse kind of player. Ovechkin, he's downhill, very physical, and he's big. He's a big guy. So for him to have that kind of scoring touch is really unbelievable, considering his physique. And as Steve said, you have to keep a guy on him, because he's so dynamic, and he just makes scoring look so easy, as you see with all his stats. And 6 seasons leading with 50 goals, or leading the league in goals. It's unbelievable. And so, the Flyers, they have a really tough task ahead. And, they were able to split the season series 2-2, and they showed some success against the Capitals. And you have to, I guess you'll have to concede some goals to Ovechkin, because he's going to get his. It's just a matter of, trying to limit his teammates.
Yeah, you mentioned about that, and sometimes that's exactly it with Alexander Ovechkin, because the last time the Flyers played them, Alexander Ovechkin scored the Caps' only goal in regulation before the game went to overtime and eventually a shootout. But on that goal, it was a power play goal. There was nothing any Flyer on the ice, especially Steve Mason, could do. Ovechkin was in perfect position, just bang right in the net. You got to tip your cap on that one. But you bring up a good point too, in the fact that he is a physical player. Like, you see a lot of times with these star players, Sidney Crosby. Sorry, I got a little bug in my throat. But how they're not exactly the guys who will be physical. Obviously you got to protect the stars, but Alexander Ovechkin is a guy who he could protect himself too.
Yeah, he'll lead the charge. He'll lead that physical charge, and it makes it much easier to play with him, because when you see your leader and your captain go out there and knocking guys on the ice, that kind of boosts your spirits and your confidence. You're like, hey, I'm going to knock these guys around too, just like my captain's doing, and we're going to get behind him and follow his lead and follow his charge.
Steve, would you say that he's the most dominant player in the NHL today? Because, I don't think anybody would really disagree with you if you did.
I don't think there's any question about it. The only fact is he doesn't have a cup on his resume. But as an individual player, not looking at the team, I don't think he's the best in the business.
Yeah, but now we go from one of the best scorers in the league and just overall players to one of the best goalies in the league in Washington Capitals, Braden Holtby, because this guy, he played out of his mind this year. 48 wins, tying Martin Brodeur for most wins in a single season, a 2.20 goals against average. Everyone's saying he's pretty much the odds-on favorite to win the Vezina Trophy. Steve, is it safe to say that he's kind of finally risen to being one of the best goalies in the league? Because he's kind of had a steady climb of falling back a little bit, but then just starting to get his legs under him again. And now he's, obviously by that win total, he's a top-tier goalie in this league.
You should just have a full-screen graphic of a brick wall this season. It's just 48 wins is unbelievable. I mean, even when the Capitals, got on a cold streak, weren't scoring, which wasn't very often, you weren't getting the puck past Holtby. I mean, he was making miraculous saves out there, and I think it's safe to say, just give him the trophy. It's his.
Oh yeah, I don't even know who would really contend with him at this point.
I mean, look at the numbers. Steve Mason had an incredible second half of the season, but as a season as a whole, I mean, Holtby stands alone.
Absolutely. Fleet.
And Holtby, he's the reason that the Capitals are this good. Ovechkin's always been scoring goals. They've always had some good playmakers at the forward position, the center position, and in the defense. But it's Holtby who stepped this game up, and that's really propelled this team to the top. Holtby, he's kind of, as you said, he kind of has his ebbs and flows as far as his performance, and so the Capitals weren't really consistent. But the way he broke out this year, they're the reason. That's the reason why they won the President's Trophy.
Yeah, and so often, especially in playoff time, the goalie is the most important player on the ice. I mean, just the other night, the Blackhawks and Blues had a 0-0 game go into overtime, in which the Blues finally won on an own goal of all things. Like, goaltending is important. Just ask Corey Crawford, just ask Henrik Lundqvist, just ask Jonathan Quick. Steve, how crucial is it to have the guy wearing the mask be like your top guy?
Absolutely, Tyler. I mean, that's what wins cups, is when you have a goalie that's on his game throughout the playoffs. Because look at the first 10 minutes of the first game going to happen tonight between Flyers and Capitals. It's going to be hard hitting. There's going to be very little shots on net, and that's going to be throughout the series. It's just these teams hate each other, and they're just going to be hitting each other left and right. And there's, like you said, there's not going to be too many shots on net, but the shots that will go on net are very good, wide open shots, sometimes breakaways that your goalie needs to be on the top of his game.
Yeah, we're going to see, and this could be a very chippy series, like you said. I mean, maybe not Flyers-Penguins level the past a couple years ago, but we'll see. We'll see how that goes. But now it's time to get into our predictions, because we decided to do a prediction poll for this series with it just getting underway. So let's see it, and I went optimistic here. I know what you're thinking, the Capitals President's Trophy, but I have the Flyers winning in 7 games, which I think could be feasible, because the Flyers, they contended with the Caps this year, like Fleet mentioned. They split the season series. I'm not saying that the Flyers are going to have a newfound energy and defeat the Caps in 5 games. I think that's a little out of hand. But my MVP for the series, it's got to be Claude Giroux, because I don't think there's ever been a Flyers captain, at least in my lifetime, that has been so much as this guy goes, the team goes. Like, so many guys are behind Claude Giroux. Like, they all say, no, like, we know that he's our captain and we'll go through hell or high water to help him out. So it won't surprise me if the Flyers lose the series, but I've got him in 7. Fleet, you have Caps in 6 with Braden Holtby as your MVP.
Yep, we just talked about it, and Tyler, you just mentioned it, the importance of goaltending in the playoffs. And we all just sat here and said how much Holtby has improved. So I really can't see why Holtby would kind of regress at this stage. It's the first round. They have some first-round demons. I think they're really going to be on edge for this series. They know what they have to do to get through the first round, and they know how important it is.
All right, and Steve, lastly, you have the Capitals winning in 5 games, and you have Mr. Alexander Ovechkin as your MVP.
Yeah, I got to go with the captain. We talked about him earlier. He's just going to have a tremendous game, and I expect the Flyers to, as much as they limit them, they're still going to take those penalties, and Capitals on the power play are just unstoppable.
All right, so we'll be interested to see what happens. Next week, we will check in wherever that series is. Heck, if it's a sweep one way or the other, it may be over at that point. But thank you, Steve, for coming on to talk both Ed Snider's legacy and preview the Stanley Cup playoffs with us.
Thanks for having me.
We will be right back as Al Costa will come on, and we'll talk some Philadelphia Phillies. Stay with us.
Can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me something. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, no thanks, not my thing.
Mom.
I promise you, your real friends won't care. Deal?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. A public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
Welcome back to Sports Talk Philadelphia. We're here to wrap up in our final segment. We're talking some Phillies baseball because remember last week when the guy at the far end, Mr. Alan Costabile, he kind of went off on a little tangent about the Phillies bullpen. Well, they shipped up a little bit. They got themselves in gear a little bit and after a couple switching of roles. But let's take a look at this stat from Corey Sneidman because the Phillies starting rotation has actually been pretty reliable. Now, this is from a few days ago, so stats may not be exactly where they are right now, but fourth in ERA, second in WHIP, second in opposing batting average, slugging, strikeout percentage. Alec, we'll start with you. The starting rotation is obviously it's not 4 aces worthy, but they're finding their niche.
Oh, you just showed those numbers. Those numbers are actually better now after the Phillies have shut out the Padres twice in this series. And it's amazing. The Phillies have 3 shutouts in their first 10 games. They've only done that twice in their entire history, 1913 and 1954. So it's amazing that this group of guys is coming together like this. You have a group of young guys with Nola, with Eichhoff and Velasquez, and then you have Hellickson and Morton as the veterans. Honestly, I think this rotation will do very well.
Yeah, I got you. I see you there. But yeah, I mean, they are doing well, and it's, again, I mean, and also, too, Fleet, keep in mind, like, we could be excited. There's no doubt about it. I mean, Phillies have really nothing to lose this year, but it's also the second week of the season. Yeah. Like, we could be excited, but we can, let's kind of be cautious about it too, right? Like,
let's take a lesson.
It's a weird mix.
Yeah, let's take a lesson from last week when we were, over the top upset with how bad the pitching was. Let's not get too high up about how good they're performing now. A lot of these guys are young, so expect inconsistencies. You just go out there and you hope for the best. Again, these guys are young, so they'll definitely be inconsistent with their performances. And it's just a matter of building it. That's what Pete McKinnon's there for. But again, as far as his starting rotation, these aren't household names. It's not Roy Halladay and Cole Hamilton, Cliff Lee. It's guys that you never really heard about, but they're young, and so that gives you a lot of hope going into the future. It's a young nucleus. And it's really something to just get behind. And even with the bullpen, how we just talked about how they, stepped up their game. They're young, and it's just like, let's just build together.
All right. And Alec, with Vince Velasquez's most recent start, 16 strikeouts, complete game, no walks, 2 great outings from him in his first 2 appearances in a Phillies uniform. Obviously, this is very promising, and it's hard not to get excited about.
I will be excited until the Phillies give me a reason not to be excited.
So May.
I'll say late June.
Okay,
I'll give him a chance. But I was listening to the game today, and I was excited. 16 strikeouts. Last person to do that, Cliff Lee. 1 strikeout away from setting the Phillies' all-time strikeout record for 1 game. It was amazing in his first start in Citizens Bank Park. Right now, this Astros deal is looking pretty good.
Yeah, I would say that entirely. Right now, Velasquez alone is making that Giles trade look good, and they got like 3 or 4 players in that deal. So very, very good. But now we move on to our favorite part of the show, the Fast Five. 5 just rapid-fire questions for the panel. Fleet, we will start with you. The Rams made a nice little ripple in the NFL this past week, trading up for the ¡1 pick, giving up a lot of picks to the Tennessee Titans. Smart or stupid?
Well, I would say it's smart because the league is so important. You need a quarterback, and I think if the Rams really value this, either Carson Wentz or Jared Goff as highly as we expect them that they rate these guys, it's a smart move. They were on the flip side of this when they did that deal with the Redskins, and you saw what happened with that. So maybe there's some kind of reverse fortune for the Rams. Maybe they know what they're doing and they'll benefit from this. So right now, I'll say it's smart. You need a quarterback.
Who knows? I mean, obviously, we got to wait and see how the draft picks develop, but we'll see. Alec, apparently the Eagles were a top contender for that #1 overall pick, as reported by ESPN. Should they have been, or should they just stay content at the 8 at this point?
No, stay where you are. You got to keep those picks. You never know where you're going to find your next, really good player, whether it's the 2nd round or the 5th round or 1 overall. You got to keep those picks, especially for the Eagles, who kind of need them.
Yeah, I mean, just ask Tom Brady the importance of getting drafted high, So, Fleet, we go to you. The Golden State Warriors did it. They broke the Bulls' single-season wins record. This has to be considered one of the best teams of all time, right? No matter what the bitter old legends may say about him.
Without a doubt, this is one of the best teams of all time, and they're so fun to watch. I wish they would have won more than 73 games, to be honest. I was mad whenever they would lose, and I'm not even a Warriors fan, but what they're doing this year has just been incredible. You know, all the threes that they hit, especially Steph Curry, you know, he hit 10 threes to get their 73rd win. Like, the guy's unbelievable. He scored 46 points in 3 quarters, and, you know, that's just what you get with this Warriors team. There's so many different guys that are just entertaining to watch, and I love the team. You know, I'm on their bandwagon for sure, and I'm not ashamed to admit it.
I will be amazed if any team beats them in the playoffs.
They fly through the playoffs. I can't imagine them losing.
Yeah. Alec, last week, Steve Graham, who of course was just on desk with us, shared a video on Twitter of me singing At Last by Etta James before our show started. What would be one of your go-to karaoke jams and why?
I mean, you have to go Bohemian Rhapsody. You got to hit those high notes and you got to go low. You got to bring it all. You got to show them what you got.
All right. And lastly, Fleet, we go to you. Kobe Bryant officially playing his last game. How are you feeling? Are you feeling all farewell Mamba, or are you saying, yeah, goodbye Mamba?
More of the latter. Yeah, goodbye Mamba. You know, I don't like, he's a legend and all. And his last game, he scored 60 points, but he took 50 shots.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. But, you know, farewell. You know, do you, whatever.
Yeah, whatever, bye. All right, so thank you guys very much for joining me. Thank you all out there for watching. You can keep up with us on social media, on Facebook, Twitter, full episodes on YouTube. Thank you very much for tuning in. We will see you guys next week with your Flyers playoff update.